Blockchain Club. Very excited to have a partnership here with the OU AI Club, help host educational events for you all. Obviously, you guys, have a lot of topics you want to cover throughout the year. So, we're not going to be with you every month or every quarter, but, maybe, twice a year or, annually, we can come in and work with you all and help you out. We're definitely very interested in trying to organize events with you all. If you're interested in, a hackathon event or, more of like a workshop, learning how to, build decentralized applications with our software, we'd love to get involved in any way we can to help you. So today we're going to just be giving a brief intro into blockchain. I believe that, there are some computer science majors in here and some MIS majors as well, maybe an econ major or two. So just want to give a high level overview of a blockchain for the people who may not, be as technologically adept as others. We'll apply how blockchain and AI can work together and interoperate. I think Omar, with you guys being titled the Blockchain AI Club, he really wanted to make sure he can incorporate AI, and then we'll also introduce you to Shardus and what we're building as well. So blockchain, let's get into a high-level overview of what blockchain is, because today everyone hears in the news is Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. And that's what so many people think of when they think blockchain, but that's just one application of blockchain. And there's so much more value to blockchain than just being a infrastructure for a financial service. So before we get into actually describing in depth what blockchain is at a technological level, I just want to give you guys a brief analogy of the impacts that I believe blockchain is going to have on the world. So here's a picture of Fifth Avenue in New York City on Easter morning in 1900. And you see all these horse-drawn carriages. Not if we were in person, I'd ask to see a raise of hands if anyone could see the one powered car. But because we're not in person, I'll just show you here. There's one powered, fuel powered car on Fifth Avenue in New York City in 1900. Here's another image of Fifth Avenue in New York City 13 years later. Within 13 years, you see the adoption and disruption of horse-drawn carriages to fuel-powered automobiles within 13 years, and look at the impact that had on the planet. I really believe and am confident that blockchain and decentralization is going to have a similar impact on the world today. And this is why it is so important for you guys to be learning about this right now and to get excited about it and motivate yourself to learn more, because it's going to have a huge impact on your life. And if you can become skilled and have an education in this, it'll help you advance in your career as well. So here are a few keywords to help give you an overview of what blockchain is. Blockchain is decentralized. So databases today and the applications we use today and the organizations we work with today are all centralized. If you want to get a car with Uber, you have to go through Uber to get the rider to come to you. Uber is a middleman. That's a centralized service. But really the value in Uber is the riders and the drivers. Uber is just a platform in the middle that has developed an application, and they have millions and millions of dollars in overhead. They invest a lot of money into marketing and payroll and all of this stuff that provides no value to the rider or the driver other than connecting them. And they make billions of dollars in profit. So why should we need to rely on one middleman application like Uber and have to trust them and give them all of this profit, when we could set up a decentralized system where no one owns the application in the middle? It's almost more of like a subsidized service that connects two parties together. And so decentralization refers to the control and decision-making from a centralized entity to a distributed network. So rather than relying on one centralized entity in the middle, blockchain enables decentralization where users connect directly with each other. Blockchain enables consensus. So consensus is a fault-tolerant mechanism that is used in computer and blockchain systems to achieve the necessary agreement on a single data value or a single state of the network among distributed processes. So what that means is basically blockchain is a set of protocols that enables you to contribute your individual computer to participate in a network with other people's computers all over the world. And the consensus mechanism enables trust in that network, where you can trust that, you know, the data that is on your computer is also going to be seen by all of the other computers, and each computer is going to be able to come to an agreement that that data is valid. No one can manipulate or change the network in a way, you know, where fraudulent, you know, actions are going to occur. Blockchains are immutable, so data in blockchains can't be altered. And then all of that data is stored on a ledger. So anyone in a decentralized network is able to access a ledger where they can see any transaction or you know, share of facts or data that has occurred on a public ledger for everyone to see, that can't be changed over time. So we'll get more into each aspect there. So again, focused on the centralization versus decentralization. Here you see an image of a centralized network versus an image of a decentralized network on the right. You know, there's so many different use cases for disrupting centralized business models today. I really feel when we talk about the paradigm shift blockchain is going to have, this is the biggest impact blockchain will enable, is decentralization. Like, business in the world today will shift from us working with these central entities, which are really just, you know, a whole bunch of strangers who we don't know working under a brand name calling themselves a company. Why should we trust these people when we don't know who they are or what they're doing? When we can just remove the middleman and work with an application where we can trust technology more than we can trust some human powered organization that we don't know. You know, imagine, you know, one use case could be, you know, social networks and decentralizing social media networks. You know, Facebook today is just an application owned by Facebook where we go on there and we submit all of our data to Facebook, and they're able to sell that data as our demographics to businesses who advertise us. Facebook is centralized, and so they can control what media we see. You know, I think with the recent, you know, political agenda, you know, now you have to be concerned about, you know, what is the political position of the organization whose application you're using. You know, now they're starting to choose which posts we can see and which ones we can't, and they're trying to control, you know, the awareness and education we have on certain topics. With decentralization, you don't have to worry about this because it's a computer database that's not owned by anyone. So any developer can now, you know, build in applications, and groups of people can come together and build applications on a network that's not owned by anyone. And, you know, so there's no centralized authority there to have any influence. And this can happen for numerous use cases we'll get into more in a moment. Blockchain networks can be private or public. So a public blockchain can be, you know, a permissionless blockchain. Essentially, you know, a developer could create some, you know, public application you could use, just like a social media application today. You don't have to get approval to join that, you know, social media application. It could also be a private blockchain or a permission blockchain. You know, this is primarily something like, you know, a group of enterprises that find value in working together and sharing data together. They could create a private application on a blockchain where the only way you can access that blockchain is if they give you approval to join the network. You know, one common idea of a private blockchain used in the enterprise space today is insurance agencies who want to be able to share patient information between each other, because the healthcare industry is so fragmented today when it comes to insurance. It's really hard to, you know, you go to one doctor and then you move to a new city, you know, hours and miles away, and you see this new doctor and, you know, they know nothing about you. It's really hard for them to get an accurate, you know, transcript of your health history and, you know, look at, you know, the insurance companies you're working with and share your data with them. And so, you know, a lot of buzz is around the use case of, you know, a private blockchain for insurance companies to be able to share patient data, and for you to be able to share your data easily with different healthcare providers and insurance companies. So there are another, here's another, example of two different types of decentralized networks. So, today I think a lot of people here might be familiar with Ethereum. Ethereum is a smart contract platform. So a smart contract is kind of like a vending machine. It's a computer program that describes an agreement with the ability to self-execute and enforce the terms of a contract. So when you go to a vending machine, it's basically a contract where you say, if I put in this money and hit this button, it's going to execute and give me the product I want. The same thing for a smart contract. You define the terms of the agreement, and if those terms are met, the smart contract self-executes. So now people can build applications on the Ethereum network and create a smart contract that, sets the terms for what happens when people interact with that decentralized application. So Ethereum and a smart contract platform, think of it as like Ethereum refers to itself as the world computer. Being able to bring everyone's computer resources all together in one so people can build applications on top of them, and you can use all of these different decentralized applications on top of Ethereum. There are some downsides to Ethereum though. If one application becomes extremely popular and there's a lot of people coming to that application and using it, then what happens to all the other applications when the computer network resources are being consumed more by that leading popular application? Transaction times increase. You have to wait longer for transactions to process. The fees of the network become volatile when you're sharing Ethereum's computer resources with other applications. So there's volatility and user experience challenges as well. So that's a smart contract platform. A dedicated network is something like Bitcoin, where Bitcoin is just Bitcoin. The decentralized network is totally dedicated to Bitcoin. It doesn't share any of the computer resources with other applications, and no other applications are being on top of the Bitcoin blockchain network. Decentralized networks also have tokens, as you know. So a token doesn't always need to be a form of, currency. It's really just, a form of value, and value can occur in many different ways. You could be with an airline and, have your airline miles. It's not necessarily a form of currency, but it is value. Tokens can be fungible or non-fungible. So Investopedia refers to fungibility as a good or assets interchangeability with other individual goods or assets of the same type. So an example of this is if you get a loan for $100, the US dollar is fungible because you can pay that $100 bill back. You don't have to give someone a $100 bill back. You can give them 5 $20 bills back, or you can give them 2 $50 bills, or you can give them 100 $1 bills. You're able to exchange different amounts of currency with the same type of currency. An example of non-fungible would be if you got a car rental. The only way to give that car back is to give the same car back. You can't give someone, the same model of car with a different color back. They're not interchangeable. We'll get into use cases for non-fungible tokens in a minute, but I covered the social network use case of blockchain. Other use cases could be decentralized finance, gig economies, like I mentioned, decentralizing Uber, or different gig economies where there's a provider and a user and a middleman in the middle. There's also security tokens as well, because now with tokens, we can tokenize equity in organizations. Rather than a company having to wait to, go public with an IPO, they can, sell equity to raise venture capital. They can, sell security tokens, which are basically digital assets that represent shares in their organization that they can easily distribute to people all around the world. A non-fungible token, like I mentioned, is just one token that represents an asset. So people are now selling digital art online, and if you own the non-fungible token for that art, then you own that piece of art. So that's another example of a use case there. Any questions before we move over to Omar's portion of the presentation?
I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
So you kind of have this vision of this potentially becoming like ubiquitous in the world, but I guess there's sort of always people who are kind of resisting, especially generally like the older generation. And so like I guess I was wondering what is sort of that transition from sort of these more physical assets or physical systems look like to sort of transition the world into like this more decentralized and like user customer driven sort of
Yeah, that's a great question, and one of the biggest one of the biggest things that's stopping blockchain from becoming globally adopted at the moment, well, one at the most basic level is just government regulation. You need to have governments, regulate and build legislature around these things to make it legal. For example, if you receive like a digital asset in the form of payment today for a job, you may have to report that on your taxes as not as a wage, but still as an investment. You can't report it as like a 1099 income, really. It's like an investment still. So the legislation has to be there, but what Omar is going to get into in a moment is the technological limitations of the infrastructure that affect the user experience of blockchain applications today. Because today you can use Facebook, and if you like a post, it happens immediately. On a blockchain, that doesn't necessarily always happen because they're not scalable enough yet to enable high volumes of data throughput. So Omar will get more into this, but I think adoption will happen over time. We really just need to get the user experience of applications to be the same as what we experience with a centralized application today, so that someone might not even realize they're using a decentralized application because it has the same experience as a centralized same user experience as a centralized application with some additional benefits. And we're just not at that point yet where the user experience is equivalent to the centralized user experience.
Thank you.
You have the questions. Okay, go on. Sorry.
No worries. So Omar, if you want to
Sure.
take over now,
Sure.
Before Omar takes over, please, I have a question on your previous presentation, please.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Like, I want to ask a question on the presentation you just finished.
Yeah, of course, go ahead.
Okay, you mentioned something about venture capital investment, like investing in private companies and tokenizing that investment, right? Yeah, I'm working on something like equity crowdfunding, like a way to invest in private companies before they go public. Now, my concern about creating a token for investment in these companies before they go public is this: like, would that be centralized or decentralized? Because right now the major problem they have is that government is trying to protect the public from investing in these companies. Like investment in private companies is only limited to some licensed investors. So what do you think about like tokenizing investment in these companies?
Yeah, I mean, like tokenizing equity is, a popular use case, and the decentralization aspect there, really isn't as key of a focus. People aren't focused on building these decentralized companies that enable investment in, startups before they go public. People are really just interested in the tokenization feature, being able to take equity and make it a digital token where you're now buying equity online, because it's much easier to distribute equity online in the form of a token than it is to go into private office meeting rooms and shake hands and sign agreements with people all around the world. So that's really the value of blockchain when it comes to, and for the use case of helping enable investments in private companies. It's that tokenization feature, being able to easily distribute and assign ownership to the equity and the shares that you're selling.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem. Okay, Omar.
Cool. Yeah. All right. Thanks, Greg. So yeah, I'm gonna kind of initially we were gonna talk a little bit about like the limitations of blockchain and so forth, but I thought I might change this up a little bit and talk about the connection between like blockchain and AI. So there's some areas that I can think of where, there's going to be some, you know, overlap in synergy between blockchain and AI. So, one area is what's referred to as chain analysis. So blockchains provide a lot of, immutable data that's transparent. All these public blockchains like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and so forth, you can download their complete ledger and you have massive amounts of data. And of course, making sense of that data is not an easy task. And that's what, AI is really good at doing, is helping us analyze data and, find patterns in those data. And so a couple of areas where that's already starting to happen is using it for price prediction, right? So looking at what's happening in terms of, coin movement, say like on the Bitcoin or Ethereum network, and tying that back to the price of Bitcoin or Ethereum and helping to forecast, if the price is going to go up or down. And of course that, has, financial incentive and a payoff if you can get that right. Also, another area is in fraud detection. Especially, law enforcement is very interested in this, where they want to look at the movement of the coins on these networks and try to see if there's any kind of money laundering or illegal activity that's happening. And it's actually proven out to be a pretty good investment for them, because they've been able to catch people that have done some illicit activity using blockchain. And previously it's actually harder if they had used cash, but when they use blockchain, it leaves a good trail of activity behind that's immutable and permanently recorded, and it's helped them be able to catch some of the bad guys. Can we move to the next one, Greg?
Yep.
Yeah, and then the other area that I see where blockchain and AI can have some overlap is in training sets. AI, of course, needs lots of training data. And one of the things that you probably know is that the output that your AI produces or learns is only as good as, what you train it on. And so, you want to make sure that the data that you're putting into your system has, some assurance and integrity. And that can be achieved by, notarizing the hash of the data on the blockchain, right? So like if, you're receiving some data from, say, NIST or, some other data provider, you want to make sure that that data didn't get corrupted before you start using it to train. And so, these providers of data can actually notarize it, and so you can validate that, using blockchain. Also, blockchain can help you monetize your training data, right? So suppose you are a provider of training data and other people want to use your data to train their networks. Well, now, blockchain provides like an easy way for you to be able to monetize that, because it provides on-chain payment. So it makes payment much easier across the world and a lot more automated. And it also allows you to have built-in access control where the, based on the private key that made the payment, you can now, give a token to this address that made the payment so that they can then access the data. Now, in the AI field, this whole thing about deep fake is becoming a big issue, and the deep fakes are getting better and better. you know, the videos and the audios that they're able to produce using AI now are getting to the point where I think it's beyond like human detection, and now it's just, you know, they're trying to use AI to detect AI that was, you know, detect the fake, you know, video or audio, and it's becoming like a AI versus AI arms race. And who knows which side is going to win, but one way that you could defend yourself against those kind of things is, you know, imagine like maybe a law enforcement agency has a video of somebody committing a crime, but when they present that in court, what if, you know, the defense says, hey, that video isn't really, you know, this person, this is made using a deep fake. Well, how, you know, what are you going to do? It'd be hard to, you know, we could get into a world where you almost couldn't use some evidence like that. So one thing you could do is have untampered evidence notarized into a blockchain by having your capture devices sign and, you know, push that data into a blockchain. The other scenario is like where you want to protect yourself as an individual. You know, like suppose you're a celebrity or, you know, some famous person, and somebody creates a deep fake showing you being somewhere doing something, and you want to prove that you weren't there. You could actually now like maybe have an app that you download on your mobile device, which periodically sends an encrypted geolocation and has that notarized on the blockchain. And so like later on, you could prove in court that, hey, I wasn't even at this place and so forth. So those kind of things are, you know, some areas where, you know, blockchain could be used with AI. And I'm sure there's a lot of other areas that I, you know, don't really have time to cover, but just wanted to give you guys some ideas of, you know, what there could be some overlap and intersection between AI and blockchain.
Take it away, Shahzad. And also, before Shahzad gets started, I know our time is almost up here, so we'll get through the last material here quick if you guys have another 5 minutes or so.
Don't think I'm not in a rush or anything, so y'all are free.
Perfect.
Hey,
Great.
Greg. Oh, okay, you there? Sure.
Thank you everyone again for having us here. So the question here is what and who is Shardus and what do we do? So Umar Saeed, who just spoke, is our founder and our chief architect. He basically you know, has been involved in the blockchain segment for possibly over a decade now, which is a lifetime in blockchain. And having been there, he realized very early on that there would be certain limitations to the blockchain software being presented on the networks. So with that in mind, he started working on Shardus to fill in the gaps which were being presented, you know, by the networks which were in place. With his background in NASA and Raytheon, Zynga, and other organizations, he started working early on, and 2018 is where the software development actually started. So we have about 10 plus people involved in the association now, and we all contribute in various aspects, from development to business development to, you know, working within the organization and moving it forward. The final version of the software should be available hopefully before the end of this year, and we hope to commercially market it to organizations who would want to use it within themselves or in a public network. The contributors within Shardus are paid through the Shardus tokens, which are valued at 10 cents each, and they're listed on several exchanges. Eventually, they'll be. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Shahzad. Yeah, so, you know, I just wanted to mention again for like the MIS students here and just everyone here, you know, one new form of of an entity is, you know, in the future, we're now seeing something called decentralized autonomous organizations. And these are really just associations of people working all around the world together on a common goal or project. It doesn't have to be, you know, a formalized LLC with the government or a C Corp where you pay your employees with a W-2 and you pay them a cash paycheck, you know, every single week or bi-weekly. You can now have, you know, a project where you're working on that project and you're compensating individuals with the token for your project. So you can use your token as a form of compensation as we are here.
Right, and with the advent of crypto, I mean, again, you know, these tokens are recognized because of the value they hold and the value they carry. And these have been, you know, in most cases, been acceptable for payments. So going on to, you know, how this is earned by each of the contributors, you know, it's 10 cents. And then eventually these tokens will be used by organizations who want to acquire the software. So they would have to buy it from the market and lease and license the software, you know, as soon as it comes available. These tokens are in ERC20 form, which is on the Ethereum network, and they're transferable and exchangeable between individuals. Again, more information about this can be sought on CoinGecko and CoinMarketCap. So talking about Shardus. Shardus is building a layer 1 distributed ledger technology software. This has been in development, like I mentioned, since 2018. It basically provides a framework for any organization that is looking to launch their own blockchain software. So for example, this is not to be mistaken with a large network such as Ethereum or a smart contract for that matter, but this is mainly for organizations who want to start their own network and start building it for, like Greg mentioned earlier, any of the social media platforms could be used for that, any of the payment networks, insurance, banking, etc. Several thousand applications could be, you know, used on that, and as we move forward, it'll become more and more common and prevalent in the industry. So, for example, the decentralized applications you could build on that is a smart contract platform. One of the applications we are building internally is Liberdis, which is a payment network and a messaging network. We're also working towards a global will platform, which is basically another use case and application, which will do an identity check and a reputation check for individuals across the globe. From a private standpoint, Greg also mentioned the insurance industry. You know, they have a network which they use. The health industry, as well as, you know, the other liability and home insurance, etc., where they maintain a platform to verify, you know, an individual in case of the health network, or a value of an asset in case of a, you know, an asset which is insured with them.
Sorry, Shahzad. I just wanted to add too, because Omar changed his slides, talking about the limitations of blockchain and why we're building Shardus. You know, when Omar started learning about blockchain in 2011, he was really interested in universal basic income. And if you've researched universal basic income at all, then you know that's essentially a payment, you know, people want to distribute to individuals globally. But then he started thinking, okay, if universal basic income was going to be put into production, you know, what organization would be in control of distributing that currency to everyone globally? You know, that's a lot of, you know, liability and power to be in control of a universal basic income. So how can we create something that's decentralized and scalable enough to support the vision of a globally adopted universal basic income? And Omar found blockchain as a great solution and infrastructure for this. But one of the biggest challenges with blockchain right now is the scalability of decentralized networks. For example, if I come in here and I search Bitcoin transaction per second limit, let's see what it says. Currently 7 transactions per second is the limit on the Bitcoin network. So imagine if everyone in the world is trying to transfer Bitcoin together at the same point in time. I'm trying to go to the grocery store. You know, if you go to a grocery store today and you try to buy groceries at the grocery store, there's likely more than 7 people in that one grocery store trying to buy groceries. So how am I going to be able to, you know, make this something globally adopted when I have to wait for all the people in the world to process their transactions before I can? It takes hours. And so what we're building with Shardus is software that's linearly scalable, where as you add a computer to the network, the transactions per second limit increases. So as a network grows, they can, people around the world who support that network can contribute their computer to the network as a node, and that's going to increase the transaction processing throughput, allowing for more linear scalability. So we can, be able to handle something like a global UBI use case.
Okay, so like I mentioned in the earlier slides, Shardus could be used to build many of the decentralized applications. The primary limitation, as Greg just mentioned, in the networks today is linear scalability, the speed of transaction, and the cost of running the network. The energy costs have become very high, and thereby the cost to any of the consumers who uses the network has become high, which they call gas fees. So for example, if you were to transfer money from one point A to point B or between individuals, you end up paying a fair amount of transfer fees, which are consumed by the networks. So what we are trying to do is build a network software, make it available to organizations, which they can use as an alternative, and use it in a cost-effective fashion, both in terms of the operability of the software. So the platform required would be very light in terms of the resources required and also the energy requirements. Plus, with the high rate of transaction processing speed, would give everybody an advantage to use Shardus as a software. Greg just covered the UBI component of that, and we spoke about building a identity and a reputation network called Global Will. So these are all applications which we are building, and hopefully they should be coming in soon. So we touched about this briefly earlier. There is a huge need to decentralize the current applications, because right now the way the applications rest, it is power in the hands of the few. And with decentralization, you basically take that off into individuals rather than organizations. So for example, based on your political view, based on the situation, you cannot be controlled if the application is decentralized and not owned by a single entity, but rather a large number of people. Services which require a very high transactions per second. So Shardus would provide that, where you could use, your application with the requirement where the transactions per second is high. Now, Greg just touched on that Bitcoin today is maxed out at about 7 transactions per second. Ethereum today is probably at about 64 transactions per second. So we just had our last demo in our last quarter, where we demonstrated about 1,200 transactions per second, which is, compared to the existing networks, is much faster and higher than availability. Also, areas which require a high degree of decentralization and social networks, plus this could be used in games, in identity networks, etc. There are tons of applications, where Shardus could be utilized. Shardus is not limited just, in the public networks. We could be used by enterprises who are looking for, large applications where storages and services are key to them. Shardus would provide a very secure and immutable, which means non-replicable environment with enough redundancy and BCP compliance. BCP stands for business continuity. So if something happens to the data, there would still be redundancy created in order to ensure that the business process is not disrupted. You could find more details about Shardus on these sites. This is a comprehensive link which will lead you to our YouTube channel, to our Medium, to our Reddit, and Telegram, amongst others. Greg, back to you.
Thank you all so much for your time. I know we were scheduled till 2:30 today, so we went about 12 minutes over. Apologies for that. But if anyone has any additional questions, happy to answer them now. Again, this time was really all for you guys. So are there any other questions?
I have a question. Thank you all for the presentation. It was very interesting. I was wondering to sort of how this idea of decentralization sort of still is analogous to you guys providing essentially a service or a platform as a company. And I was wondering, like, essentially, is the platform that you're building, is it also going to be like open source? I know it's supposed to be accessible for anyone to sort of build on top of it, but I guess I feel like because it's still a foundation that sort of you guys created, like, isn't it still kind of still centralized to you, and sort of how do you go ahead?
Yeah, I'll answer half of that, and I'll let Omar answer the last half. So the first portion is we're not building a platform per se, like a network that we own that people are building on top of. We're building software developers can use to produce their own decentralized networks. So like today with the internet, when you build a website, you use HTML to create that website. No one owns the HTML or has control over that, but people around the world can use HTML to build their website. With Shardus, we're creating something similar to like a software development kit where, you know, it's lines of code that can easily be put into execution for you to create your own decentralized network for an application. So you don't have to, developers don't have to consistently, if I want to go out and build a decentralized application, you know, we don't want developers to have to focus on building the decentralized network and blockchain layer. We want to enable them just to focus on the application layer, on building the application on top of their own decentralized network. So, you know, that's Shardus in a nutshell. And so your question was, you know, this decentralization piece, how are we not centralized? And was there an additional portion to it that I missed?
That was it. You answered.
Yeah, I think they also wanted to know if it's open source.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like an API, but yeah, or SDK, like you said.
Well, yeah, so the software would definitely be open source. You know, so if you think about, like, you know, how open source software is developed, a lot of times there's, you know, some initial developer that initiates a project, and then other people join in and help out, and, you know, they build the software and so forth. And then at the end of the day, no one person owns the software. It's just out there in the public domain, and anybody can download it and use it and so forth. And then if you contrast that with how companies and organizations develop software, you know, it doesn't have to be closed source. It could still be open source, but at the end of the day, they have a model for, you know, how you're supposed to license it, right? Now, this world that we're moving into now with blockchain allows us to have, you know, tokens that we can attach to the development of the software, right? So think of it as, you know, all these people that are working on an open source project from around the world, as they contribute to that software, they're getting, you know, some kind of points proportional to how much they've contributed. And so that's what our Shardus tokens are like. And then later on, when the software is available and can be used, anybody that wants to actually deploy that software in a production environment would need to purchase a license, and the license is purchased simply by acquiring those tokens and submitting them to a smart contract in order to receive a license token. So what this new world of tokenization allows is for you know, open source projects to become organized in a different way that was not possible before. So before you only had this model of completely, hey, bunch of guys working together. There's no way to attach, how much you've contributed to this code, or any way to allow people to buy the code in a decentralized manner without filling out licensing agreements and signing things and so forth. So it's really a different approach. It's kind of a hybrid between completely open source and completely private company driven.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Omar, we have another question from Mohammed Abdelnabi. What do you think about attacks and threats to blockchain, such as the 51% attack? He went into describing the 51%, what a 51% attack is, which you are already aware of, Omar. So how do we work to prevent such attacks at Shardus?
Yeah, so basically a 51% attack, for the people that don't know what that refers to, is when you have a single party controlling more than 51% of the resources that are being contributed to the network. Usually the nodes that are providing the consensus of the transactions. With such an attack, you could cause somebody to think that they received a payment, and then the person that received the payment delivers the goods, but then you reverse that payment because you have the ability to now cause a different fork in the chain to become the primary chain. So with that kind of an attack, you can't actually change the history, but you can prevent, or you can cause a double spend kind of a scenario. Okay, so now every blockchain, regardless, is going to be, susceptible to that. Now, the only way to really prevent that kind of an attack is to have your network be highly decentralized, so that you have a diverse, group of node providers, right? A lot of different people providing the resources to the network, such that no one party could achieve 51% of that network. And so some of the requirements to do that is that the resources that are needed to run such a node to contribute to a network like this should not be too high. Otherwise, there's only a few people that could provide those resources. So if you lower the barrier to entry, it actually allows many more people to be able to contribute to the network. The other thing is that you have to design your network so that many different parties can participate. Nowadays, some of the faster networks that you see in the blockchain space, they're using only 20 or 50 nodes in the network, and they've sort of kind of given up on the decentralization aspect in order to achieve higher transaction throughput. So so to get back to your question, the way we prevent that in Shardus is we've designed Shardus so that the nodes have very minimum requirements. We've actually demonstrated running a node using a Raspberry Pi. And the other aspect of it is that we've designed the Shardus network so that many participants can become a part of that network and contribute resources to it. So, having a high number of anonymous, unrelated parties is the only way to prevent a 51% attack.
And, another question here from Ethan Connolly. Would you say you compete with other blockchain networks like Ethereum? Will past blockchain networks get taken over by better technologies, there's Cardano now, which apparently is more advanced than Ethereum, and Ethereum is more advanced than Bitcoin. Can these networks work together or be interoperable? So the first question is, would you say we compete with other networks like Ethereum? And I'll answer that one.
Yeah, go ahead, Drew.
Yeah, I'll take that part. So like we were explaining earlier, Ethereum is a smart contract platform. It's a live network that's already in production. So this is, Ethereum is a massive network of non-related computers around the world that are working and communicating with each other in the Ethereum network. And other developers can come in and build on top of that network, build their own application on top of that Ethereum network. So Ethereum's already a decentralized network in production, and there are people building applications on top of Ethereum. That is why they call Ethereum, they refer to it as the world computer, because Ethereum is essentially a set of protocols that enables people from around the entire globe to contribute a portion of their computer to the network, forming the world computer. Shardus is not a direct competitor of Ethereum because we are not focused on building a decentralized network that is in production. We are focused on building a software development kit that enables developers to build their own decentralized network. And the developer does not focus on, they're focused on creating an application. Today, imagine today if HTML didn't exist and every time you went to go build a website or an application, you had to try to, figure out how to write HTML for the first time yourself and build this whole new programming language. We don't want any developer to have to ever worry about trying to figure out how to build a decentralized network on their own. We just want to enable them to focus on their application. And based on what they want to build, the decentralized network they build with Shardus could be, a smart contract platform for an industry where they want to enable, different developers within one industry to build their own applications on the same network. Or it could be an application specific network. Like someone could build a social media network and they just want to build the decentralized social media application. So they just build, a decentralized network with Shardus focused on that social media application. So Shardus is just software. It is not yet, it will never be a decentralized network that is in production. It's just software to enable other developers to build their own decentralized applications, which is why we're not a competitor with Ethereum. Omar, so I'll let you answer this question. Will past blockchain networks get taken over by better technologies?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think we're in a very early stage of, blockchain technology. If you think about like databases, in the 1970s, databases was a new concept, and there, many different experiments were tried with databases, and eventually, some of them proved to be better than others, and they've prevailed. Many companies were created that you don't even hear about or know about nowadays. Similarly, like with search engines, who remembers, web crawler, which was the very first search engine, right? Or Alta Vista or Lycos. I mean, new things will definitely replace previous things. Now, along with that, though, you have to consider that with some of these networks that are being created, there is a network effect, which means that, the more people using the network, it adds value to that network. And so it's hard for a new network to get created and become dominant when there's already another network in place, right? Money is something that's like that, right? Like you and your friends could create a new money, but that's not going to catch on, because even if it's better than the existing system, right? If it's technically better, it's still not going to catch on, because the rest of the world is not going to drop, their system to adopt something that you created just because it's better. And so that network effect will prevent some of this from happening. So yeah, so it's kind of, there's two sides to this coin. We are very early in the whole cycle. I think it'll probably be about 20 to 50 years for us to really flesh out all the capabilities and things that we can do with blockchain, and it will be evolving for quite some time. And
I'm sorry to cut you off, Omar. We're
Sure.
just a half hour over, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time. If you could just answer this question in 30 seconds or less, and then we'll see if anyone else has any questions, and we'll wrap up. Can these networks be interoperable? Can they work together?
That's one of the things that is a key area in blockchain technology right now, is that all these different networks are getting created, and they weren't designed to be interoperable. But what's happening is that we're now getting different networks that are being created just to make these existing networks interoperable. And so at the very core level, if you can transfer value between these networks, then you have some level of interoperability. And so, yeah, they can be, interconnected like that. Now with Shardus, we're actually designing it so that any networks created with Shardus will be very interoperable with other networks.
Thank you, Omar. So again, so sorry for everyone for going a half hour over here. It was a pleasure speaking with you all. Are there any other questions before we wrap up?
Is it okay to email you guys? I have a few other questions, but I think they'll probably be long.
Yeah, of course. You see, we have. I would email any technical. Oh, I just heard some background noise. I'm sorry. I thought someone else was talking. Yeah, any technical questions, please send to omar@shardus.com. I would also say that, if you're ambitious and you want to get ahead in your career and you're looking for internship experience, also feel free to reach out to Omar or myself, Greg at Shardus. We're always looking for interns, whether you're on, MIS and business, or you're a developer and you want to contribute. You can work remotely and gain some blockchain internship experience working with us that you'll be compensated for. So thank you all so much for your time. Hope you have a great day, and please enjoy the rest of your time at OU. My wife's an OU grad, and I recently graduated back in 2018. It's one of the best times of your life, so take advantage of it. Thanks, guys. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, well, that wraps up the meeting, guys. I'll send an email about the next meeting. It'll be the first Sunday of next month. Cool.
Bye,
Thanks,
guys.
everyone.
See you, everyone.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, Casey.